Where do we start? I'll start off by saying I am Leslie Roth. I'm a member of the May 30th Alliance. This is episode 2 of Live from Occupy City Hall. It is being filmed from outside the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. And I guess that's a place that we can start. The reason that this is not being filmed inside of a studio or inside of a home or inside at a different setting is because on October 2nd, 2020, coming up on 2 years ago, Tyrus Jones, an unarmed black man, was shot multiple times by Rockford Police Department Officer Dominic McNeese. Initially, after he was shot, a member of the May 30th Alliance went to the... Sorry about that. A member of the May 30th Alliance went to the scene where he was shot at. Other members of the May 30th Alliance would then convene, find out more information about the shooting, and within hours, the May 30th Alliance and other activist groups within Rockford, Illinois, put together a protest. I don't know if you would, I mean, it was a protest of sorts, but really a demonstration, and march to Rockford Police District 1, where we believed at the time the officer who shot Tyrus Jones was employed at or working from. That was about maybe 25 people or so came out that night, and this is coming off the heels of hundreds of people, even at that biggest number of people that came out at any single protest, I believe, was on May 30th, where I think over 1,000 people at some point in time participated in the protest. And this protest movement, these rallies and marches happened in the days, weeks, and months after George Floyd was murdered. And so on October 2nd, after Tyrus Jones was shot, after this issue had manifested itself here in Rockford, Illinois, I found it personally disturbing how few people who I seen marching and rallying and demonstrating during a issue that was manifesting itself outside of Rockford, how when it came home, those people weren't to be seen. And those people haven't been seen since then. And this is not just 5 people or 10 people or 20 people, 50 people, 100 people. It's hundreds of people. And since George Floyd was murdered on May 25th, 2020, 6 people have been shot by police officers within Winnebago County. And each time, those hundreds of people who came out and those hundreds of people who took to the streets on May 30th and on the weeks and months after George Floyd was murdered, they stayed at home. And by staying at home, they stayed silent. And I personally didn't want to be complicit in that silence. It was more than my conscience could bear. And so I continued, and other members of the May 30th Alliance continued, and other activists as well continued. This isn't a singular or individual thing I'm speaking about. There are multiple other people, multiple other organizations that from the figurative ashes from the figurative ashes of the uprising in 2020, there have been things that have arose from them outside of myself, outside of the May 30th Alliance. And all of those things contribute to what is needed to progress these, or to see progression in these issues. So, after Tyrus Jones was shot on October 2nd, 2020, protests took place, demonstration took place. People went to Rockford Police District 1. Police came out for a little bit, had a small conversation with activists. There was a small back and forth. People left, went home, and waited to see what we would find out in the next 24 hours. There would be a press conference that would be held the next day. Tyrus Jones was shot on a Friday. A press conference was held on Saturday. At the press conference, the then state's attorney, Marilyn Hyde Ross, spoke about the investigation being turned over to the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force. Members of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force were on hand. They spoke about opening up the investigation. At the time, there was no body cameras on the police officers in Rockford, Illinois. So the only thing that would have been possible to come out to see some type of visual footage of what took place was dash camera video footage. And what the police department said was that Tyrus Jones was driving a car. Tyrus Jones, they had a warrant for Tyrus Jones. They went to go arrest Tyrus Jones from outside of somewhere. Tyrus Jones drove away, and the police officer gave chase to Tyrus Jones. Tyrus Jones crashed his car. After he crashed his car, the police officer believed he had a weapon in his hand and was approaching another car. And what the state's attorney then basically alluded was a grand theft auto, which they would later on charge him with. And the police officer shot him. And he was shot in the back multiple times, running away. And the police officer believed he had a weapon and believed he was going to steal a car. Tyrus Jones would be found to be unarmed at the scene, so the police officer's belief of him having a weapon was incorrect. That was a mistake. I don't know how, in that same token, the next belief that he had, which is Tyrus Jones stealing a car, how that can be believed when the first thing he believed, him having a gun, proved to be inaccurate. However, that would be the narrative that would run for the day, is that Tyrus Jones was attempting to steal the car. Police officer was trying to save the people in the car, thought Tyrus Jones had a gun, and so he shot Tyrus Jones. After the press conference was held, members of the May 30th Alliance got together collectively, and we had a conversation about what we could do. What is it that we felt would be adequate to respond to someone being shot, someone being unarmed and being shot after months of protesting, not only about unarmed black men being shot, unarmed black people being shot, but about the institution of policing as a whole. We had endured multiple months of arrest at protest, unjust arrest. We had endured multiple months of psychological trauma, physical trauma that took place at these arrests. And all of these things were happening because of our, in one aspect, our solidarity with Minneapolis and what was going on there, and the murder of George Floyd, what was going on in the whole nation at a certain point. And then, but it also became very much about what had happened historically in Rockford, Illinois, what had happened historically in Winnebago County, what had happened historically in Northern Illinois when it came to the institution of policing that was here. During that summer of 2020, there were multiple news stories that began to circulate about just how unjust the system of policing was here. And one of them that stood out to me was a story that said, that listed all of these different cities in Northern Illinois and how likely you were to be pulled over if you were black in each one of these cities in comparison to white people being pulled over. And I think Rochelle, Illinois was like 8-1, which is insane because of how few people live in Rochelle that are black and how many white people live in Rochelle. But Rockford specifically had a 3-to-1 ratio. Black people were 3 times as likely to be pulled over by police officers in the city than white people were. And black people are probably a third of the demographic in comparison to white people. Black people probably make up 20% I've seen different statistics that range from 16 to 20%. So if we was to highball it, let's say 20% of the population in Rockford, and white people make up 60% of the population in Rockford. And that, as I spoke about in the first episode, that is an institutional issue, because any individual police officer that you may ask is going to tell you, of course, they don't pull black people over more often than they pull white people over. You know, now with their buddies, they might talk a little bit differently. But of course, if you call them to the table, they're going to say, no, they don't do that because it's 2022 and it's not kosher to say that anymore. It's not politically correct. But the policies that they follow, the procedures that they follow, the ideologies that the institution has is one that is disproportionately criminalizes black people and people of color. And once they become part of that institution, they adopt that policy, they adopt that procedure, they adopt that institutional ideology. And so collectively, when the stats come back, they pull black people over 3 times as often as they pull over white people. And everybody contributes to that. And that's one of the, and on both sides of this coin, I'm going to get back to talking about why we're at this setting, why this is being filmed outside of City Hall. But with the understanding that these issues are institutional, that it is a collective effort of the police department that leads to black people being pulled over 3 times as often as white people, it will need to be a collective effort to deal with that issue. It will not be able to be dealt with in any individual effort or any individual manner. Which is why when we advocate against these issues, we advocate not simply against the individual that may be perpetuating the issue at that moment, i.e. Dominic McNeese shooting Tyrus Jones, but we advocate against the whole institution of the Rockford Police Department physically and psychologically traumatizing a community, a collective. And in this specific incident, that collective was the black community, was young black people. And that's one demographic of it. And then, of course, being a citizen of the city. So these are all these different collectives to pull from. Okay, so, it's a little windy out. Let's return to the setting. So the decision was made to conduct an occupation of the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. We, during different times in the year, have been to different police districts. We, during different times of the year, have been to the courthouse, have been to the Justice Center that was here. And so we have been to politicians' homes. And so we felt that one of the places we had not conducted a protest that very much represented the institution and not the individual was the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. And we felt that specifically because the mayor of Rockford, Illinois, Tom McNamara, had held press conferences and put on this whole PR campaign pretending to be in solidarity with the issues that black people dealt with in the United States of America, we felt it highly hypocritical of him after Tyrus Jones had been shot while being unarmed, for him to not come forward and have a press conference about it, for him to not come forward and speak about it. He came forward in less than 24 hours after people broke into stores and there were fires that were set in different places after May 30th, after the uprising of May 30th. No one had been shot, though. He held multiple press conferences speaking about these to address those things. And in those press conferences, he spoke as somebody who had an understanding, who was progressive when it came to some of these issues. Holding a press conference and responding to a shooting of someone isn't a progressive thing to do. It's a humane thing to do. Doesn't mean you have to get up there and say, convict the police officers who did it, or I'm going to fire the police officers who did it, which is an unrealistic expectation for someone who's like Tom McNamara. That's an unrealistic expectation to have of him. But it's not unrealistic to ask him to get up in front of a few cameras and to speak and to talk. So the May 30th Alliance came to the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois, and began an occupation on the evening of October 3rd. There were multiple community members that joined us. There were multiple other activists, multiple organizations that joined us. I think maybe that first night it was 35 to 40 people that were here. And again, that's a far cry from how many people came out when this issue was a figurative one and not a actual one, which speaks very much to the type of consciousness that is here, how low the consciousness is when it comes to these issues, which we'll get deeper and deeper into. One of the things I really want to address and get to the root of in this Live from Occupied City Hall series, at least in this first portion of it, is the consciousness, the psychological aspect that exists within these issues, why we have to unlearn things and relearn things, and why we have to be able to identify the way that we are preyed upon psychologically and when these things happen, and how systemic things, something that is systemic, cuts to the root of the consciousness, cuts to the root of the psychology, cuts to the innermost being of something and of people. When it's systemic, it's deep. So we came out to the city hall, Rockford, Illinois, began the occupation. We released demands online to the mayor stating that we wanted a press conference to be held. In that press conference, we wanted the name of the police officer who had done the shooting to be revealed. And we also wanted him to condemn the ongoing violence that had happened at the hands of his police department. As we sit here on September 28th, Yes, September 28th, 2022. Tom McNamara has never held a press conference to address the shooting of Tyrus Jones unarmed. Tom McNamara has never condemned the violence that took place at the hands of the Rockford Police Department in 2020 and continued on, because since Tyrus Jones was shot, 5 more people have been shot by law enforcement within Winnebago County. 2 people have died in the jail inside Winnebago County. He's never held a press conference to address any of these things. I'm not sure let me not say something let's not. And I think one of the things that's important to clarify is that the May 30th Alliance was an organization that was created on May 30th, 2020. That's not necessarily true. Okay, the May 30th Alliance is an organization whose beginning is from May 30th, 2000. And I said 2022, didn't I? Let me try that over. One of the things I think is important to state and is important to understand when understanding the occupation of City Hall in Rockford, Illinois, is that the May 30th Alliance is an organization that was created in 2020 in the wake of the police terrorism attack that took place on May 30th, 2020 outside of Rockford Police District 1, when people came out in solidarity with Minneapolis, but also to raise awareness to these issues that exist within Rockford, Illinois when it comes to police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. And people were beat. People were tased. People were falsely arrested. People were pepper sprayed. People were shot with beanbag bullets. People were shot with pepper spray bullets. I was personally shot with a pepper spray bullet in the face. And of course, we're not gonna get into people who will have disparaging remarks to that. That's not what the purpose of this is. So, after Tyrus Jones had been shot, it was the first time that this issue had manifested itself since the May 30th Alliance had been formed. And we had no game plan to go off of. We had no prior understanding. I had never personally dealt with or interacted with anybody's family who had been shot by police or who had dealt with some type of violence at the hands of police. I was learning all of these things as I was going in 2020. And of course, I'm still learning things as I'm going, but now sitting here on the other end of this issue manifesting, the macroaggression of these issues manifesting 6 times, I do have some type of understanding that, okay, when A happens, you do B. When B happens, you do C. When C happens, you do D. When police shoot somebody, this is what's gonna happen next, and this what will happen following that. And so, the thing that I thought was the most important, the thing that we collectively thought was the most important, was to do something significant. So we put the demands out. We came to the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. We sat in front of the doors in front of the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. 35, 40 people. We came out on a Saturday evening, stayed all through Sunday, stayed to Monday. And then on Monday, a litany list of things happened. And as this series goes on, we'll get into all the different things that have happened in the 2 years since we've been conducting this occupation in City Hall. But Sunday mornings, there were multiple people, some people who maybe I might never even have seen again since then, who came out, brought food and brought donuts and brought different items. It was cold when we came out here. It's cold right now today. But people had blankets. People brought blankets. People brought pillows. People brought electric heaters. We had a generator, and there was very much a communal, collective fight back that was in existence. And throughout time, for all different reasons that I'll get into as this series continues on, that fight back was deterred and hindered, and naturally what happens with anything, with any struggles, is that there are ebbs and flows within the movement, within the struggle. And the only way you will be able to be successful, in my opinion, in any struggle is understanding that there's no win at the end. There's no check mark or no final destination that you get to and you say, okay, all is done now. And you have to be able to go with the ebbs and flows. You have to be able to accept when there's hundreds of people out and accept when there's 10 people out. You have to be able to accept when there's 1,000 people out and be able to accept when there's one person out. And that's not something that's easy, especially because here, particularly, it's hard to look at some of these families and the loved ones of these victims and see so little support and see so few people behind them when they can turn on the news or look at YouTube clips or think about past events when other people had, hundreds of people had the whole nation or the whole world behind them when the same issue took place in their life. And part of the reason that I continue struggling as adamantly as I do is because I believe at some point those families and loved ones will feel that. They will see their loved ones' stories told, their stories told, and they will be able to experience that same solidarity that begun the May 30th Alliance, or is at the root of the origins of the May 30th Alliance. And so that is why we came out to the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois, organizationally. That is why we continue to be out in the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois, organizationally. And that is why I'm filming this from outside of the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. We begun creating content outside of the City Hall in 2021. We did something called an ongoing teach-in, where we set up a camera, set up a cell phone, went live 24 hours the plan was for a full month to go live for 24 hours for a full month, every day reading a different book. I think we did that for maybe about 11. Yeah, we did that for 10 days. And then on April 10th, 2021, Faustin Guaitigo was shot and murdered by Winnebago County Sheriff deputies in his home. And then on April 11th, 2021, Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot while he was running away by the Rockford Police Department. And we shifted from the campaign of teaching to a campaign of raising awareness and solidarity with Jose Gonzalez Jr. and with Faustin Guaitigo. But from that point forward, we have consistently created content, filmed content, put out podcasts, and that's been one of the ways we tried to create avenues of teaching and create avenues of giving information, also create avenues of receiving information. Like I said, we've done a lot of readings. We still put out a podcast entitled Rockford Reading Daily. Comes out every day, 8 o'clock a.m. And in there, I learn something new every episode. And when I do these, the hopes is as we do these live from occupied city halls, as we did in the past, as we have more people from the organization speaking, I learn something in every conversation with them. And so one of the things at the root of and at the heart of the May 30th Alliance is teaching. And so I hope that these episodes of Live from Occupied City Hall can be a step toward that objective. All right. ending this episode, and I don't really got an outro for the episode. Don't really got an intro or outro for this shit, but I'm gonna figure intro and outro out. Just give me some time.